Hello, my name is Kyle Bradford, and I will be demonstrating how to cause your iOS device to print to an iPrint appliance. When printing from iOS, there's two basic ways to print your iPrint appliance. One is to use the Novell iPrint app. This is an app you can download from the App Store. And I've already authenticated to my Novell iPrint appliance server, so you won't see the initial authentication here. But you'll see that on the left pane, two printers show up. These are printers that are defined in my iPrint appliance. And I select these printers and add them as favorites. And then if I were to go to an app such as Adobe Reader or some kind of Microsoft Office app, there's a technology within iOS and within these apps to use open in, where you can open it in Facebook, Twitter, some other application, and one of those applications would be the Novell iPrint app. Well, I don't have those particular apps installed right now, so I can't do that. I cannot demonstrate that, and I cannot print using the Novell iPrint app. All the apps I have installed, such as Chrome, Safari, Notes, Camera, Mail, a lot of these default programs, use something called AirPrint, and I'm going to demonstrate that right now. Here's Chrome. I'm just in a web page, and I'm going to choose this in the upper right, and there's a print icon. I select print, I choose AirPrint, and I'm going to ask to select a printer, and these are printers that are being advertised on my network. None of these are the iPrint printers I've defined in the iPrint appliance. These printers I'm not going to use and I don't want to use. I want printer 01, as you see in this web page, or printer 02-secure. I want those printers to show up in my list, and they do not. And the reason is, I'll show you in this diagram here. So in your average network, your wireless network and your wired network are separated by a router. And typically organizations will install their servers on a wired network. In this example, the 172 network is the wired and the 10.0 is the wireless. The iPrint appliance, which is hosting the iPrint printer configuration, will not be visible to my wireless devices. When I hit that select printer, and it did a multicast asking, are there any devices on this wireless network defined as an AirPrint enabled printer? I did get a list back, but not the list I wanted, not the printers I wanted, not the iPrint printers. That's because multicast packets are blocked at routers. That's what routers do. They segment traffic. They block multicast and broadcast traffic. So I need a different way, a unicast or some other way for me to communicate to the iPrint server on my other network, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this demonstration. There's two main ways to do it. Here's the TID that I'll be following. It's TID number 7012895. This is the message you would typically get. I didn't get the no AirPrint printers found because there are printers, AirPrint defined printers on my network, just not the ones that I wanted. But that's the typical message you'll get. The first solution I'm going to show you is the Dns Sd Solution. This is if you have a DNS server that you have control over, that you can create records to, and which get populated to your wireless configuration. Let me show you what I mean by that. If I go into settings and I go into my Wi-Fi connection, I tap the I next to my Wi-Fi connection. Notice my DNS servers, I have two listed there, and my search domain. If I have the ability to update that DNS server and that search domain, or sometimes called a zone, then I can use this DNS solution. And for this purpose, I actually don't have the ability to update that DNS server or that zone. I'm going to be using a different DNS server and zone, and then I will update my Wi-Fi configuration to demonstrate how it works. Let me show you my DNS server in this example, this test that I'm doing. happens to be a Microsoft DNS server. I've done this with several different flavors of DNS: Linux DNS, OES DNS, info blocks, all sorts of DNS appliances. All of them work pretty much the same way. Notice my DNS server is pretty boring right now. It doesn't have many records at all. Yours obviously will have more records. Notice my zone name in this test I've called MS iPrint. It's my Microsoft iPrint test that I'm showing you. And what I'm going to do is follow this TID, which will populate that DNS server with printer records. If I scroll through this TID, the first step is to download a script. We need this script because the way in which the records need to be created are very specific, and I'll be showing you those records later on, and you'll quickly learn you don't want to create the records manually. So I'm putting into my iPrint appliance server. I'm logging in as root. Notice SSH will not work by default in your iPrint appliance server. Notice I have these two printers defined. One's AirPrint enabled. And even though he was AirPrint enabled, I didn't see him for my iOS device, which is expected because my iPad and my appliance server are on two different networks. Both of them are mobile enabled. And I was going to show you, let me show you the two printers I have defined here. I have printer 01, printer 02. If I click on printer 01, notice my gateway load string. I have printer name equals pass-through space no SNMP. I recommend this no SNMP switch. You do it through this configuration here. You add it here. You click apply, then you click back, then you click apply to shut down the printer and apply to start up. That will cause the no SNMP setting to take place. Without it, if I were to submit a print job through AirPrint, through my iPrint printer, I would get a message back saying, check for errors on printer. As an end user, that's a scary message. You would assume that your print job did not go through. In fact, all that message means is there's some kind of notification on the LCD display of your printer, such as tray 4 is empty or toner low, some warning, not necessarily an error. So if you put no SNMP there, it will prevent those indicators, those warnings from being presented to the end user in the form of check the printer for errors. So yeah, I recommend you put no SNMP there. Sorry about that message. So we have our printers defined on the iPrint appliance. They're mobile enabled, and for this particular solution you don't need it AirPrint enabled because we're not going to be using the AirPrint advertiser, the AirPrint listener to find the printer. So I have my iPrint appliance. I've already copied that script. I'm going to paste it in there, and I just downloaded it. And what I was going to show you is that putty session. The reason I was able to make that putty session is because I turned on SSH. By default, SSH is turned off. If you go to the appliance system configuration and go to the services, we can turn on SSH, and we can set it to start up by default when restarting the appliance. You just highlight SSH here, you go to options. Just notice set as automatic is grayed out because I've already done it. That means it'll automatically start on boot up, and then start is grayed out because I've already started it. That will enable you to SSH to the iPrint appliance. So I've downloaded the script, and if the script is not there on the FTP Novell outgoing site, in fact I'm going to make this text bigger so you can see it better. If it's not there, just email patchfeedback@novell.com and we'll make sure it's there. So now I've copied the second line, which is changing the permissions to make it executable. I'm going to CD in the temp directory so you can see. There's the script file. Notice there it is. Notice it now has the RWX executable. And the other step is to copy this XML file. So that XML file is a text file that has a record of all the printer names and their configuration. And we're going to use that XML file to run the script against to populate the DNS server. I'm going to show you what that XML file looks like. So notice we have in this XML file the name of the print manager, which is the default print manager name, the name of the first printer I have defined, which is printer 01, and notice it shows security enabled is 0. It's not enabled for that first one. And I have printer 02-secure, which is secure enabled. So now that we have those two files, the script file and the XML file, we need to cause our DNS server to accept DNS updates. You can do it through a command line on a Microsoft DNS server, or you can right-click the zone, go to Properties, and change it on dynamic updates from none to non-secure and secure. And then we can run. This is the command you use, and I got it from this TID. Let me show you where in the TID. Here's a test, by the way. If you want to test to see if your DNS server is able to receive updates through NSUpdate. Notice we're just adding a test record. I called it iPrint test. We could have called it Mickey Mouse. It doesn't matter. Just seeing if we get refused or not. Once we're sure that we can make updates to the DNS server, and even if you cannot, the script will just say it refused it. It doesn't hurt to just run the script. But here's the syntax. We identify -z in the zone name, and then -s, the IP address of the DNS server. And this works the same way with Linux DNS. It's the same syntax. You just need to make sure your Linux DNS server will allow updates, however you make that happen. Each Linux DNS server or Appliance DNS server has a different method of allowing dynamic updates. So I hit enter on this. It goes really fast. Notice it sent those two DNS records. And now I'm going to show you why we recommend you don't manually populate this, but rather use the script. Before I do that, I'm going to turn off the allow updates, set it back to the original configuration. And notice we have these new containers. Here's each printer name is represented twice in this particular container. Notice we have the address of the print manager that it's bound to. This KW Bradford 8 is the name of my my iPrint appliance server, and it's over port 631. That's non-secure. Notice printer 02, same address but a different port, the secure port, port 443. And there's these subcontainers here. All of these records are required by iOS. If you have any one of them wrong, it won't work. Especially look at this text record. You do not want to manually enter all this data. If any bit of it is wrong, it will fail to print or fail to advertise, fail to be found. Notice one thing it's worth mentioning is my print manager is bound to this kwbradford.lab.novell.com DNS name. One of the requirements that that iOS has is the print manager must be bound to a DNS name with a valid top-level domain, such as .com, .net, .gov, .edu, or a country suffix like DE, AU, and so forth. Some invalid top-level domains would be .local, .loc, .intranet, or an IP address. If your print manager is bound to an IP address, it will not accept it. Notice I'm catting this ipsmd.conf file. If I look at it, my PSM host address, I am bound to this DNS name. this must be the valid top-level DNS name. And now, since we're on the subject of what requirements we need for this to work, we also need to make sure the printer names are valid DNS names, meaning no spaces, special characters. The only thing DNS allows are alphanumeric and a hyphen. Anything outside of those characters, not allowed by DNS. Other requirements is your iOS device. You must be able to communicate ports 631, 80, and 443 to your iPrint appliance. And then another important requirement, and I'm going to show it to you right now. It's even though I've imported that DNS information, this will not find those two printers because I'm pointing to the wrong DNS server. You want your access point or your DHCP server, or however your DNS information is delivered to your device, to deliver the DNS server address which has that information. In my case, it's this 165 server. And you want to deliver the search domain that has the correct zone name. In my case, it was iPrint. And see, I've reattached to the network, and just to validate, I'm showing the iPrint zone and the Microsoft DNS server that I just updated. Now that I'm pointing to the right DNS server, I can go back to Chrome or Notes or Camera or Mail or any of these other default iOS apps. Hit that upper right icon, go back to Print, choose AirPrint. I will select my printer. Notice Printer 02 and Printer 01 now show up. In fact, I'm going to send a print job. I'm going to go, and before I submit that print job, let me show you my iPrint stats. Notice how many print jobs. 2 print jobs have come since 12 a.m., but 0 have come since 9 a.m. So I will select print. The print job went through, and I know it because I hit F5 right now. And notice it incremented from 0 to 1, and the older stats went from 2 to 3. That is how you print to a DNS server through iPrint Appliance from an iOS device. Now there's another way to print, and this TID calls it the satellite Avahi listener. Let's go back to my diagram here. In this scenario, let's say I'm not going to use a DNS server for whatever reason. Maybe I don't have access to update records on my DNS server. Or maybe I don't have the ability to push down that DNS server and zone information to my workstations. I can use this other solution where I put a Linux device on this wireless network. In my case, I have a laptop with Ubuntu installed, and it can be any Linux OS, OpenSUSE, Red Hat, whatever flavor you can think of. They all come with this open source Bonjour emulator called Avahi. And I'll show you my DNS or my Ubuntu workstation. It's right here. In this case, we do need AirPrint enabled. Let me show you where that's done. Go back to Home here. Go to my iPrint Appliance configuration. Look at my list of printers. And for this test, I just have printer 0101 AirPrint enabled. Remember, it's not doing me any good. And I'm going to set it's not doing me any good because my wireless devices are not on that network. I'm going to go back to my previous Wi-Fi configuration. Let's go. I'm going to forget this network. I've just disconnected, so you won't see my updates here, but I'm going to reconnect. I'm going to put in my password, and I'm going to get that previous DNS information. So notice I've reconnected to my wireless network, and notice I'm back to my previous DNS server and search domain. If I were to go back to Chrome and say I want to print this web page, go to AirPrint, select printer, I'm back to not seeing printer 01 or printer 02. I'm on the wrong network. But on the correct network, on my wireless network, I have this device. Really, if you look, it's as simple as copying some files to this remote Linux device that's connected to the wireless network. I go to Avahi services, notice it's empty. If I do the same on my iPrint appliance, Etsy Avahi services, I have SFTP-SSH, which is there by default. I have SSH, which is there by default. And this printer 01 is there because I AirPrint enabled that printer. In fact, let's look at that file. It's just a text file. It has the address to point to of my iPrint appliance. It has the port. In this case, it's non-secure, port 631. It has printer information. And that's really all it needs in order to be seen through Avahi. So I need to copy that file. So the TID, I'm following the TID down here. Notice down here, it says to copy. So we're going to copy it from the iPrint appliance, Etsy Avahi services. We might as well copy everything to this Ubuntu laptop that's connected on the wireless network to its Etsy Avahi services. I'll put in the iPrint appliance password. I'll fix my typo. I didn't see that / when I went past the screen. And now, when I look on this laptop that's connected to the wireless network, I have this printer 01. I go back to my iOS device. It doesn't matter what I have as my DNS server, as long as I can resolve the iPrint appliance DNS name. It doesn't matter what I have as my search domain because I'm not using the DNS part. If I go to print, I go to AirPrint, I say select printer, and it doesn't show because there's one more step that I needed to show you. We need to restart the Avahi daemon. So it's a good example of making sure you read every step. Go back to my terminal session here, and let's restart that. It's a different command depending on which flavor of Linux you're using. Ubuntu has this particular command. Avahi, and it's always helpful to spell Daemon right. There, it showed right up, dynamically figured out that that service is now listening on that network. Now I can print from my iOS device using the Avahi service. This second solution requires, of course, additional hardware to be connected to your wireless network, whereas the first solution, the DNS solution, doesn't require any additional hardware, provided you have access to your DNS server to make records, and that DNS server name and zone is being published to your network settings of your wireless devices. So now we can print, and I didn't need the Novell iPrint app installed on the iOS device to do this printing. All these native iOS apps will go through this AirPrint technology and communicate to your iPrint appliance. Thank you very much.